In this video, we're going to talk about HDRIs and when to use them and when not to use them. Okay, I'm going to try and keep it quick and let's just get started. So I have this scene and I just added this HDRI, this indoors HDRI, and I've tried to match this window with the cutouts that I have in the wall as a window. And this is the result that I'm getting. This is my camera view. The camera is here. Okay, this is my camera view. And if I hit render, this is what I'm going to get. And it looks kind of boring. Okay, everything is getting lit evenly and it doesn't have much contrast. And yeah, the colors, the light, everything, there's nothing interesting in this. So I've added an area light here outside of my window, area light. And if I go to the light properties, I've decreased the spread and I've added a wave texture for these lines, these shadows here, and a black body for the color. If you don't know how to do that, I have a separate video about that. You can click up here on this card and go watch that. So back here, this light that I've added, it made somewhat of a difference. It made it a little bit more interesting. It gave me these shadows of the leaves here, this just light coming from the window, and yeah, it added just a little bit of contrast. But what would happen if I just remove the HDRI altogether? So let's just do that. I'm going to decrease this strength here all the way down to 0, and this is what I'm going to get. Now, for me, this image looks way more interesting than this. Okay, so here I have more contrast. I have actual dark areas and shadows. I have highlights and light areas, and the image has way more contrast, and the focus point of the image is kind of obvious, and I can even control it and change it by changing this area light that I have here. I can rotate it. I can change the focus, which would be this light area inside all these dark areas, however I want. Okay, so this one actually looks a bit more realistic, because imagine you're in this room right in the middle of the day and the only light coming to the room is from this window here. So the sunlight that's coming inside the room, and everything else, like here, is basically lit because of the bounces that you would get from the objects in your scene. Okay, so I'm using cycles and it's a ray traced engine. So every light has bounces, and you can go to your render settings, light path, and you can actually see your max bounces. You can increase or decrease that. The higher this amount, the more bounces that you would get, the more realistic your image would look probably, and the less noise that you would probably have. But in some cases that actually doesn't matter above a certain number, and you would just increase your render time. And it means that more calculations for each bounce, for each light ray the system would have to do. So it would get heavy, and for animations especially, that would be, it would take ages to complete. Okay, so this from this one. Okay, let's just compare those. So here I can see everything, but everything is evenly lit and I don't have much contrast. And here I have the contrast, I have an actual obvious focus area, and I don't really have much detail here in the wall, but I can actually see that there is a wall. So my eye can see something there and my brain can just fill in the blanks. So, okay, I can see this leg here properly, but I know that it's there and I can see the outline. So this looks much better compared to this one. Okay, now, as I said that we are using a ray trace engine, and some of our rays, so this light is emitting some rays that are hitting these objects, and some of them are hitting the camera so we can actually see them, and the others are bouncing around, and that's why we can see this wall here, for example, although it's not directly in the light. Okay, some of these bounces are just going to nowhere, to infinity, and we can actually add a wall here and a ceiling and maybe a wall here, something like this, okay, to actually trap those bounces, those lights, and make them come back inside and be useful, okay, hit our objects, and it would actually make a difference. So I'm gonna just disable it in the viewport, but I'm leaving it for my final render. Let me show you the difference between those. So this one, the image on the left, is with the wall and the ceiling, and this one is without. Okay, so in the first glance, you might not see the difference, but if you pay close attention to this area here, oh, come on, to this area in the corner, for example, this is basically the darkest part of the image because the light source, the light that's coming from the window, is directly above it, and there's nothing here that the light would bounce those rays off to here, so we don't get much detail here. But here I can actually see the corner, so this line is coming down here and I can see the corner, but here this comes down to a black blob basically. Okay, and the result would be more clear when I want to edit this. So this is the actual image, the unedited image that we just get out of Blender, and later on I would be using Lightroom to edit this image. I use Lightroom personally because I prefer it that way, but you can use whatever you want. You should be using whatever you want to edit your images. You can even use the Blender's own compositor. When we are actually editing the image, this difference now would be more obvious. Okay, so back here, and so we added this sidewall here for the bounces, and let me clear one thing, and I'm gonna finish the video. I'm not telling you not to use HDRIs ever. There are some cases that you have to use HDRIs, and HDRIs are the way to go. For example, if you have extremely reflective materials like shiny car paints, for example, glass, okay? For those, you would need HDRI to get those reflections. So I have a glass here, and I'm not getting any reflection on this one. But if I turn the HDRI back on, now I'm getting something here. Okay, so this, let me turn off the area light. This is not from the area light or anything else. This is directly from the HDRI. So this outside part here is the reflections of this part in the HDRI. Okay, but now in this scene, the glass is not, it's not a close-up of that, and it doesn't really matter for me. I don't mind not having the reflection there, but if the camera was closer, this was more of a focus point. Or if you have, for example, you have a car in an outside area, not a studio, for example, you would need those HDRIs for the reflections, or you might need to actually build a scene outside of your camera view to get those reflections. Okay, so just know when and where you should be using HDRIs, and don't use them for everything. I know they are faster, they are easier than just adding a light and adding textures and positioning it and everything, it would be easier to just add an HDRI to your scene, but you would get better results, more interesting looking results, and higher contrast by just adding your lights manually, positioning them, and actually thinking of them in the realistic way. Okay, so this is it for today's video. I hope this was useful for you. Please leave a like down below and consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video.